What justifications are there for taking the life of the unborn? In video 1, we looked at the science of embryology. We took a glimpse at what I think is one of the best pro-abortion philosophers out there, David Boone. And we also took a look at what do abortion advocates advocate when it comes to when life begins and what is the unborn. We answered that question, I think, relatively conclusively. But in this video, what justifications are there, philosophically speaking, to take the life of the unborn? We're going to look at 4 different areas that most, actually all, objections to the pro-life view or the advocates of abortion bring to the table. There are 4 categories that cover the justification or not for taking the life of the unborn. Let's take a look. What justifications are given by abortion advocates to take the life of the unborn? 4 categories that all the objections fall into. Let's start with the first one. Size. Many times you hear abortion advocates elicit the principle that the size of the embryo or the zygote somehow offers the justification that it couldn't possibly be a human life, and therefore there's no value and there's definitely no right to life. Come on, it's microscopic. Really? Size? I think size really can be fit into the classification of no-seeums. If I can't see it, if it doesn't look human in respect to what I see in the mirror, well then it can't possibly be human and has no right to life, right? There's no moral, it's an amoral thing because it's so small. Well, that brings up a couple questions. Women are generally smaller in size than men. Does that constitute that a woman is less valuable, let alone has no right to life in comparison to the size of a man? Well, I hope you'll agree with me that that's ridiculous. Because my wife may be smaller than me, but she's one heck of a woman. And she's one heck of a human being, better than me in most aspects. It seems that when we apply that logic in the world outside of the womb, that it fails tragically and falls right into the bucket of absurdity. So let's toss that out and quit saying because the size of a thing, it's less valuable and has no right to life, because we're always going to find something in comparison that is smaller than the next. I mean, you may be smaller than the person sitting beside you or somebody that you know. I don't think you'd want to fall into this category if it would be true and justifiable to take the life of someone smaller than you. What else do abortion advocates offer? How about the level of development? Now, this is key. This is one of the areas that could possibly be more convincing, right? That if something isn't more developed, then it can't possibly be at the point where it has moral value or a right to life, right? Well, again, this brings up some questions. Follow me in this analogy. Let's say I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old daughter. I don't think you disagree with me that they are clearly different in the stage of development. They're in different places, right? I mean, my 14-year-old would have her sex organs and her reproductive organs pretty much fully developed. And the 4-year-old, not so much. Now, does it follow that my 4-year-old is less valuable, let alone has no right to life, because she's not as developed as my 14-year-old? Now, as a father, that would be ridiculous to even think, right? But as a human being, it's pretty ridiculous too. To say that the unborn are less valuable because they're not at a different stage of development? Because as soon as the zygote is formed from the egg and the sperm giving up their constituents, that begins the process of embryological development. That begins the process that you once were, bringing you to where you are now. There's no point where you weren't an embryo. You were once an embryo, and now you're a fully grown human being or still in the process of development. Let's say I have a 2-year-old. Does that 2-year-old constitute more value than an infant because they're more developed? Well, that's ridiculous, isn't it? I hope that you see that the level of development holds no water. Because we can't say that because something's more or less developed that it has life-giving properties, life-giving rights at one stage, but yet not at another stage. Because what if we degress? What if Alzheimer's is a digression of development? Does your grandmama have less value because she's degressing in her development? That she's withering to nothing per se as in human terms? Lord, I hope not. So clearly, this is not an area that holds any water either. How about environment? Clearly, the environment of the womb is different in many, many, many ways than the environment outside of the womb. This is probably the most disturbing category of objections. Because by nature, by design, the womb should be the safest and the most natural environment for a child. I mean, it's not like something shows up there by accident, right? I mean, funny story, a coworker of mine, God rest his soul, was talking to me one day, years ago, and he says, hey, my girlfriend and I happened to get an oops. And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean an oops? And he goes, well, you know. And I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Now, of course, I was playing dumb a little bit. And he said, you know, we're pregnant. And we didn't necessarily plan it. And I said, hold on a second. Let me illustrate an oops for you. You're both naked. You're walking around in the bathroom. Floor's slippery. You know, you got, you know, some fog and mist from the hot shower. And you all of a sudden slip on each other repeatedly, somehow accidentally having sex and getting pregnant. Now, that is closer to the category of whoops or oops than anything, right? I think you would agree. Because I don't know anybody on this planet that doesn't realize that the primary design of sex is to reproduce human life. So when you engage in it, it can't be an oops unless, well, maybe a condom breaks. Okay, that would be an oops at a different level. But of course, I was trying to be humorous with him. But you get my point, right? This is a natural process. The womb is a natural, should be the safest environment that a child may ever be in. But let's think about this for a moment. Let's take my toddler again, my 2-year-old. Him and I are inside, you know, we're playing video games or something together. We're playing video games and we decide, hey, we're going to step outside, take the dog for a walk. He's growing, he's learning his responsibilities. I hold the leash mostly, but, you know, I want to teach him how to pick up the dog's, you know, doo-doo and all that good stuff. So we set the video controller down, we stand up, we get, you know, the appropriate clothing on for the time of year. We grab the pup and we head out the door. Well, wait a second, what just happened? Well, we clearly changed environments, didn't we? We went from the basement, you know, kind of family video room, playing video games, to outside in the environment, cold, hot, whatever. Wait a second. Did my son's value change from taking him from the basement to the sidewalk outside? Well, of course not. That's ridiculous, isn't it? So why is it that the value and the constitution of the right to life for the unborn somehow magically develops from that 7-inch journey through the birth canal onto the birthing table? It doesn't, does it? So environment and the changing of environment does not add or subtract value to anything, and specifically speaking, the unborn. Now this is probably more of the convincing category in argumentation and objections than even that of the level of development that I mentioned earlier. Abortion advocates will apply the principle that, well, the child is not valid or does not have validity if it's dependent upon the mother. Therefore, the mother has the right to take the life of the unborn. And you get objections in this realm like, well, it's my body, my choice. Yeah, but it's not really your body. There's a body growing in your body. So if we apply that principle to the unborn, then it's their choice, their body. It literally goes both ways. So we're left with, at very least, a stalemate, but I would call it a contradiction. Because if you have a male child and you're a woman, does that mean you have a penis as well? I mean, it's a justified question, right? If it's your body. But see, it's not your body. There's another body growing in your body. That's what we would call the miracle of conception and childbirth. So what about this degree of dependency? That if someone is more dependent upon somebody else, specifically speaking the unborn, dependent upon the mother, that the mother holds the child's or the unborn's life in her hands. It's her choice to take that unborn. Or somehow that the degree that someone is dependent upon another constitutes whether or not that other person has the right to life or not. Let's think about this again, because that raises some questions, right? Let's say we have a child who's born prematurely. And that child is hooked up at the ICU to all kinds of machines, ventilators, machines that are maybe feeding this child the nourishment it needs to develop its lungs or something like that. But they're incredibly dependent upon these machines. Now, these machines cost money, time. Somebody else may need them. This premature baby is so dependent on these machines. Well, does it follow that because that baby is so dependent upon these machines that it doesn't have a right to life? Well, of course not. Think about it. On a personal level, for instance, you're walking home someday and a car swerves over and smashes you, and you're in the hospital now. You can't breathe on your own. You can't eat on your own. You're hooked up to these machines that are keeping you alive. Does it follow that you are dependent upon those machines? Absolutely. Incredibly dependent. Not only are you dependent on the machines, but like that premature baby, you're dependent on the doctors and the nurses and your health insurance and so on and so forth. So much dependency. Did you lose the right to life the moment you became dependent on those? Did you lose value? Did you become invalid? Of course you didn't. You carry your value and your worth from the moment you're conceived all the way through to the end of your life. I don't think the degree that somebody is dependent upon another constitutes their validity. It doesn't follow. Now, you're welcome to argue differently in the comments below or shoot me an email. I'd love to have a conversation with you. I will say this. The moment that I realize that you're a troll, I just delete you and walk away. I'd have no time for that because it's just intellectually void conversations, and that's not what I'm looking for, because I really truly think that this level of argumentation has a lot to say for the truth that the unborn are whole, distinct, living human beings, and there is no justification possible for taking their lives. The size, the level of development, the degree of dependency, the environment, all of it. There's no good argument. There's no good objection. I ask you to take this seriously. And if you haven't watched the first video, man, go watch that first and come into this. But you can intertwine both of those, because I talk about the scientific data and I talk about the what pro-abortion advocates actually concede when it comes to when life begins and what is the unborn. And if you're a person who's had an abortion, or somebody that's helped somebody have an abortion, and this is compelling to you, I will admit this, my Christian faith absolutely undergirds this view. And for a lot of reasons, and not just because I'm a Christian and it just works. I mean that because I believe God is creator and designer of this planet and every good thing in it, that means that by design, or by implication rather, that science is a Christian field. And I don't mean you have to be a Christian to be a scientist. I mean, we owe an awful lot to the Christian faith for the development and the beginning of science to begin with, which is another video, but there's good information out there on that. So my Christian faith undergirds it, but it doesn't mean that because I'm a Christian and I'm promoting this type of thinking, critical thinking, logical thinking, that it's untrue. That's a genetic fallacy. But the Christian message is incredibly applicable to you if you've gone through this and this is compelling and it registered in your heart and your head that you killed an unborn child. I want you to know that there is no sin that will chase Jesus away. You say, what do you mean by Jesus? Well, Jesus was God in the flesh. He took on human flesh, lived among his people 2,000 years ago. The Bible talks about it. Read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They are ancient Greco-Roman biographies. And that Jesus came as the Messiah, came to save the world from the wrath of God, from the anger and the justice that God must pour upon people who have rebelled from him. And in the category of rebellion, abortion is right there. And I know you're hurting. And I know this is a terrible, terrible thing to reckon with. But you don't reckon it by yourself. If you want prayer, reach out to me. If you'd like to talk, reach out to me. We can hook you up with somebody in your area that will pray with you and help you through this. But beyond that, God desires a relationship with you. He desires that you be in right relationship with him. As a person who's rebelled from him, Jesus is the advocate. He is the one that stands between the wrath of God and the saving grace that God has to offer. Because God is holy and just, he must put forth his wrath. He must put forth his justice, and the sentence to our rebellion has already been judged by God as separation from him from all eternity. But not just being freed from that sentence does Jesus bring us. He brings us hope and love and peace, real felt peace, because we have no more reason to be at war with God. And he can help us recover and get through the mess that we've made of ourselves. And if you're somebody who is just upset because you sat this long through this video and you've heard these things and you disagree with them, well, it's okay to disagree with me. But you better have good reasons to disagree with me. Solid reasons. Not emotional reasons. And I know this is an emotional topic, but emotions are not what gets the job done when it comes to the justification of killing anyone, let alone a whole distinct living human being. So if you want to have dialogue, that's fine. But if you're going to be stupid and if you're going to be just a troll, I delete you and I walk away from the conversation. As a matter of fact, I'll be honest, I think it's our moral responsibility to walk away from people who don't want to have an intelligent, thoughtful conversation about important subjects like this. And if you're somebody who just kind of awakened to a way to have a conversation with people about abortion rather than trying to beat them up or throw scriptures in their face, this is the ticket. This is the way to begin fruitful conversations. Thoughtful, logical, reasonable conversations. I hope this helps every one of those three categories. Thank you for your time. Till the next time, God bless.